Good afternoon and welcome to the Daily Mavericks Masterclass on marketing. I'm David Blyth, and it's great to be back for a second season of this webinar series where across 9 episodes, we're going to discuss a variety of topics relevant to the marketing profession. If you'd like to access the recording of this episode and stay informed about future episodes, please go to events.dailymaverick.co.za. That's events.dailymaverick.co.za. A quick note is that these sessions earn marketers with the professional designation 6 marketing CPD points per session. And if you'd like to know more about continuing professional development for marketers, please visit marketingsa.co.za and click on CPD. Master is partnering with the Daily Maverick in this initiative, and as is the Association of Communication and Advertising, and you can find out more about the ACA at acasa.co.za. So before we introduce our special guests this week, let me welcome my co-host for the season, Khaya Dlanga. Khaya is managing partner for eatbigfish Africa and joined our business from the client side as CMO of Rain, but has also fulfilled some very senior marketing and comms roles at Heineken and Coca-Cola, having started out as a writer at some of South Africa's most illustrious advertising agencies. Welcome, Khaya. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And have you as co-pilot for these sessions. We're looking forward to you inserting yourself into the conversation as we go along. Mpothe Elizabeth Mokoena, who's kindly allowed me to call her Elizabeth, is the Executive Marketing Director, Home Care, Southern Africa, a Unilever, and a Masa board member. Elizabeth delights in her custodianship of African consumer voices to grow global brands. And this is an amazing accolade, actually, has a proven success record of leading $11 billion brands into winning share positions. Welcome, Elizabeth. Good to have you with us.
Hey, David. Thank you.
Pleasure. Setshaba Motsielwa is founder of Kanzi Group, a coaching, advisory, and consulting business, and is also a long-serving member of Masa. Setshaba is dedicated to helping leaders and organizations rethink their strategies for the 21st century and has over 25 years of leadership experience across top companies like South African Breweries, Kimberly-Clark, and most recently McDonald's South Africa, where he was marketing director. We were just chatting earlier about the weather, actually, oddly, before we went live. And Setshaba gave his age away and told us that given it's the Durban July this weekend, he was involved a long, long time ago in the Mainstay brand and the sponsorship of the Durban July. So not sure if you're going to be there this weekend, Setshaba, but I'm sure Elizabeth is because she's based down there. But welcome to both of you. For first-timers to this webinar series, this is how it works. Myself and Khaya will be posing some questions and sometimes provocations to the guests. And when they're sharing their views and while they're giving their answers, please put any questions you might have or thoughts you might have actually into the chat. And we have someone on our side who's going to pick up on those questions and feed them to both Khaya and myself to play back to the guests. So let's start with this topic, right? The marketer of the future. And just to be clear, we're not talking about marketing in the future, although that is a related, obviously, topic. We're talking about the person. We're talking about the person who is a marketer and who are they? And so I'm going to direct this first question to you, Elizabeth, which is, when we say a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, we all have this kind of picture in our minds as to who those people might be. When we say the word marketer, what kind of characteristics come to mind for you being in the profession?
Thanks, David. So I think for me, fundamentally, a marketer is somebody who is able to identify a problem in society,
okay.
And that's through being insightful, right? So being curious about humanity and its problems. Somebody who's able to identify a problem, offer up a solution that versus every other alternative solution is the best one, right? And then be able to communicate what that offering is in such a compelling way that people want to buy that solution. So
okay.
I think for me, marketing is probably the most beautiful one because anybody for me, fundamentally, who is interested in solving consumer problems, either through their products or services, could consider themselves as a marketer. Now, there's an element of professional marketer, right? Like, because everybody's like, okay, if it's so easy that everybody could call themselves a marketer, then the risk is that you don't know the quality of marketer you're interacting with. Yeah. Either from a level of skill, yeah, and the risks that you're giving them to then go solve for. Right? If I am over, billion-dollar business, how do I know how to trust Khaya versus Achaba versus Elizabeth? And that comes with a proven track record of delivery. Yeah. That is measurable and is not what is winning on paper, but actually winning in reality through measurable marketing objectives, measurable communication objectives, and sustainable business growth. So in summary for me, I think what I would consider as a professional marketer is one who has been, I'd say, torture tested by their peers through governing organizations, whether that's the IAB or MASA, who has proven results that have been seen by industry, yeah, but more than anything, has skill. And some skills for me are like your strategic thinking, your business acumen, your consumer centricity, communication skills, creativity, and analytical skills. These are the things that we would be testing for. So how have you applied all those skills to make sure your product and services grow better than...
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Let's come back to some of the skills and capabilities in a bit. But Sechaba, do you have any builds on what Elizabeth has described as the kind of characteristic of a marketer?
Yeah, just to add what Elizabeth has said, I just thank once again David, as well as Khaya and everybody listening before I continue. Just to add to what Elizabeth has said, a professional marketer operates in a context, and a lot of the times that context is a business context. So they need to have the ability to connect the market opportunities or the consumer needs together with the business capabilities, and making sure that that bridge is a solid bridge that allows for the solutions that are offered to really be meaningful and solving the problems that the consumers are really looking out for. The other one that is quite key for me is the individual themselves need to have a particular standard of both ethics, morals, code of conduct that is consistent with being a solid business person. That, as Elizabeth said, sometimes you're looking after multi-billion-dollar brands whose value is quite critical for how the businesses are evaluated. Thanks, David.
Okay, lovely, Sechaba. Thank you. Well, let me get a bit provocative around that point that you've just made, and also the point that Elizabeth made around the term professional marketers. Let me couch that in a statement, which is that there are some industry commentators out there that say only about 25% of marketers actually have adequate qualifications. And if we look at the kind of number of marketers out there, I mean, I think there are estimates really vary between 10,000 and 25,000 in South Africa. We hear this term professional marketer. That immediately kind of makes my brain go, well, does that mean there are unprofessional marketers out there? I mean, I'd love your thoughts on that provocation.
Okay, let me start and say it is true that there are a lot of people that are working in the marketing space. Yes. And they do carry the responsibility to execute on what we have just said. The other thing that you also need to remember is that within businesses themselves, it is the HR department that gives people titles. And sometimes people carry titles without necessarily the skills and competency that lies behind and the track record that Elizabeth has spoken about. So just because you carry a title, don't necessarily think you're a professional marketer. You are working in the market space. I think those other elements that we spoke about are quite key, that distinguishes what it is that you do consistently in a measurable way over a period of time that sets you apart from your peers.
Yes. Nice, Sechaba. Thank you. Elizabeth, do you want to comment on that point around professionalism as well?
I think the only thing I would add is there is a local lens to the fact that we have the reality of being in South Africa, where a lot of people do not have formal employment. Yeah. So the level of professional, as we define it, would be somebody who is carrying, a recognized, degree from an institution, having done marketing as either a core degree or diploma, or as a core, subject, as one of their majors. Yeah. There's the people who have been registered as marketing professionals from the HR data. So the sources of information, is what is giving us those numbers, David. But what we're talking about is there are a lot of unprofessional marketers, if I can call it that, right? So if you think of, I don't know, the guy at the corner store in your township, Ezola. Yeah, he can drive demand. He is selling a product that people want on a regular basis, but he doesn't necessarily carry the professional, what is called recognition of that. And why isn't it? It's because it hasn't been tried and tested by people, in the industry who are now understanding what level of operation on a skills level can you demonstrate. So I think that's where the differentiation for me also is that we are living in a country where there's a lot of people in informal trade, in small business, in independent spaces outside of the corporate and standardized, let's call it, terminology, which is why institutions like MASA, are important, because those don't require you to be in white collar work. Anybody, who is, looking to bench their strengths and their skills can be part of an organization of that nature that can give you feedback on where do you rank versus the rest of your peer set.
Yeah. Okay. And let's be clear. I mean, this is a global issue, right? The kind of nature of the professionalization of marketing, and actually, I mean, there are some big topics under debate at the moment. Things like ad fraud, for example, which come from unprofessional and unethical behavior and selling poor inventory, etc. So there's some big issues out there which need to be dealt with by the marketing community. Let me talk about that professional marketing community of today. And I'm going to in particular reference the WFA report, which is the World Federation of Advertisers. It's a great quantitative study across 600 marketers, 25 countries. And there's two stats I just want to mention. 93% of those people that responded, who represent the marketing profession globally, see it as being vital to the success of their business. And the overperforming companies are 34% more likely to have the marketing fundamentals in place versus the underperforming companies. Now, I mean, there's so many wonderful things that catch our eye in relation to where marketing is headed, and all these, shiny objects that we want to kind of go after, or new tech. Do we have enough of the fundamental capabilities in place in South Africa? Or do we have enough of the kind of real basics in place in respect to our skills and capability in the marketing industry? Sechaba?
Okay, I'll take it. One can never be sure if we've got enough.
Yeah.
I'm just reminded of somebody being asked to say, you are so rich, how much money is enough? And they said more, because it's infinite. So
yeah,
I think the study that you have just referenced pretty much says if you've got your fundamentals in place, you're actually going to be winning in the long term. It's very important to emphasize the long term, because both brand building and success within the marketing profession has to be a long-term success that is sustained. Yes, we can all sprint, but after some time, we may run out of breath, but others are able to run all the way to Devon from Pietermaritzburg. So sometimes it's just saying, do we have the foundations that allows you in the long term to be able to be successful? And earlier I spoke about being able to connect the business strategy with the marketing strategy, and being that bridge that then says there is a gap that the business is trying to address in the marketplace. And as a marketing professional, your role is then to then say, is there a market in that gap? And then consistently making sure that you understand what it takes to look at consumer insights, understand positioning, understand channel selection, understand your target market. And obviously, as I said earlier, making sure that the actual business has got the capability to actually respond to the actual need. The fundamentals, what I like about them is that once you have them, the only thing really that changes is the context, and then you adjust accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Sechaba. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Is it okay if I add my perspective on this one?
Please do, yes.
I would say the answer to the question lies in the impact that we have in society, right? Because if we had enough professional marketers with core competencies, the results, the proof is in the pudding, and the proof is in the eating of the pudding, actually. But let's look at some key information that can trigger for us where a possible truth could lie, right? A good marketer who's got strong fundamentals should be able to show business value that delivers growth. And I will make this a broader definition. So if you look at any marketer, whether they are in an NGO or in government or even, in the corporate sectors, our economy should be growing as a result of marketers who are able to creatively solve for the problems that we have in society. But I think the most recent stats are talking about, only like it's stagnant growth. 0.1% growth on your GDP is meaning that we're stagnating. Yeah. The number of socioeconomic problems that we have that don't have creative solutions to them, right? Whether that's income inequality, unemployment of the youth, the crime stats that we have, all of these are requiring for creative solutioning, meaning there is a skill in the way that that is done in a sustainable manner to create impact. Yeah. I think the areas that are gaps in how our society is functioning actually lead to the fact that we need a lot more, of people who are using the fundamentals of pulling on local insights, really telling the stories of their brand solutions, whether that's in product or service, in a way that people could buy in, create the values in our economy, right? And get real-time feedback from consumers or their peers that it's working. And if we don't, if we're not seeing it in the economy, that means something is wrong. The numbers that you were talking about, David, as well, in terms of the absolute number of registered marketeers, would also seem to suggest that in a population of over 60 million people, if we only have less than 25,000, depending on what survey you're reading, between 25 to 60,000, means that there's a chronic need for creative problem solving. And therefore, we don't have the fundamentals at the level at which we need.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Before you say, I think it also talks to the fact that maybe the marketers that are there are not selecting the best ideas that are able to actually solve, which could also say perhaps then the skill and the competency level is not at the level that our society is benefiting from. That could also be one of the key things that is the elephant in the room.
Okay, so that's misdirected application of skill, actually, is what you're describing there. Yeah. Okay, so Chaba, before Khaya comes in with a few questions, maybe I can ask you this: you've mentioned we've been speaking about the fundamentals. That's critical. We've got to have the right foundation and base. And you've spoken about this kind of business acumen or ability to kind of couple, the marketing objectives very directly to kind of business objectives. If you had to pick one other skill that you think or capability that is needed, that you would recommend people focus on to be a marketer of the future, what would that be?
There are three. The first one is actually love the people that you work with and make sure that you get the best out of them, because sometimes they don't sit within your department. They sit in the agency and the supply environment. Treat them like partners. It's a critical skill that they need to do. Then coming internally is actually understanding how the business works. Maybe just understanding how the business makes money. Because if you do not understand the business operating model, you are likely then to be offering solutions that are not going to be optimized. So understanding the business model, it goes hand in hand with the last point. Understand finance. Some of us in the late 90s, when we were brand managers, and you managed a brand, you are responsible for the P&L of the brand and also interacting from the ingredients to everybody else. So understanding the business finance and the finance of that which you are managing are those critical three things that are important for me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sechaba, very much. Khaya, over to you.
Yeah, good to see you guys again. You know, I think I have a question that really goes into how you see the nature of marketing, change in the future. And because what we do know is that, I mean, I'm pretty sure, well, I would hope that everybody here was born after the invention of radio. When radio was invented, when television was invented, there was obviously a massive crisis. I imagine people saying that, oh my goodness, we've got all these new mediums. What is going to happen, to the industry? How should we navigate it? And we had the same thing, with the internet coming through. So how do you guys see the nature of the marketer changing into the future?
So I think there's a saying, I think it was our global CMO who had said at a Cannes earlier this year, that in marketing, everything is changing and nothing is changing. And it really resonated with me because, like we said, the fundamentals of marketing, which is what I spoke to earlier when I talked about, what is a marketer, don't change. You need to learn how to, solve problems in a manner that creates value for the entity that you're associated with. And learning how to do that is not going to change. Where and how you're going to do that is what is fundamentally changing, Khaya. We are living through the fourth industrial revolution, right? So, and I think marketing as a profession is one of those that are being disrupted, whether you're on the agency side, whether you're on the client side. Anybody with a device right now has the potential to speak on your brand, create for your brand, give you real-time feedback, and innovate, and so I think for me, some of that is causing a massive change into the future. The convergence of channels as well. You don't even have to get up from your bed to make a sale. You don't wait for 9 o'clock in the morning for a shop to open up. And the fact that we've got different media touch points that people are using. So the consumer journey is no longer the same. It's not this linear thing that we used to plan for. There are lots of interactions and points at which a consumer can consider or, opt out of what you have. So the battle for attention in the future is going to get tougher and tougher. And I think right now they're talking about 6 seconds, being a thing of the past. People have 3 seconds to opt in or opt out of whatever you have to say. So being able to tell effective stories on the right platforms, is going to become something that marketers need to do. Now, how do you also learn about that? You're going to have to understand data and analytics. So a marketer of the future actually has to be one who embraces the role that AI can have in their lives in terms of simplification. AI can help in terms of gathering mass information that is easily available, right? But also having the human skill of tapping into human insight and the touch, like the tapping into things that AI can't define for us. Some of the best innovations, the best communications were not as a result of the data that we were all reading at our desks. It came as a result of sitting with people either in a consumer immersion, on a trade visit, just with friends having this problem in your head, that you got the best solutions. So you absolutely still have to be obsessed with solving things for people. And I think the next part is when everything is automated, everything can be done for me. The thing that we seek out the most is this connection part. So in a very connected world, it's actually quite scary how lonely people are. And the marketer of the future is going to be somebody who's able to leverage moments of experience, to get people to, interact with their brands. And you'll see that is coming up a lot more. Brands who are now creating their own spaces, their own tribes and communities of people who want to engage, not just because of the product, but because we all subscribe to a certain language, an identity around the brand. So I think those are some of the things that are going to come up in the future for marketeers.
So I think that that actually touches on an interesting point that I wanted to get to. And this is a question actually for the both of you, and I hope you get a very, good and eloquent answer that doesn't sound like AI.
My pleasure.
And basically, the question that I really have here is, like we have so much data and there's so much, I think nothing we use or experience is without data today. So I think the question that I have to ask is, we obviously need more insights. So here's the question. Do you believe that you can train someone to be insightful, or it's just like a natural instinct that they have? They can be honed, and if you don't, then you just don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Khaya. You're asking it in the way that somebody says, can leadership be taught, or are you born a leader? So a lot of things can be taught. Yes, intuition is also part of intelligence, being able to use your intuition to make decisions. If you have never fallen in love and you don't have an appreciation that truly falling in love is an act of surrender, knowing that you have to give it all, not expecting anything back. So when you are in a position where you then say, can I truly take what I'm getting and have a gut feel that it's going to work, and then back it and make sure that you do everything around it to nurture it to really mesh and be polished. As you know, your role as a leader is to make decisions. And if it was a bad decision, you make the next correct decision to correct it and not stand still. Kevin Kelly says, in the future, asking the right questions will become more valuable than finding answers. It is those individuals who are going to be obsessed with probing and framing so that the next thing that comes may not necessarily be an answer, but an even deeper question that could lead to even deeper insights that then when you do respond, you are more likely then to hit the mark. And at the end of the day, I think that point that was made earlier by Elizabeth about adding value and creating value is a big distinction. Adding value means you recognize the patterns that are already there and you optimize them. Creating value is about bringing new things into the mix that then allows for new things to come together to be able then to bring that insight. So for as long as we've got somebody who is obsessed with bringing those things together, we are more likely to get better solutions.
Yeah. I would say there's a natural foundation, right? Like, and in terms of the level of curiosity that you have, the level of empathy for me, yeah, that you have. These are things that you either naturally have or can be taught. Because my level of wanting to perform on a brand can elevate my level of curiosity.
Yeah.
Meaning, in order for this brand to perform, I need to know what makes it tick, right? And what makes it tick is serving consumers. So who are those people? Where are they? What do they like? What do they not like? When was the brand working? What was the brand doing? That is curiosity, curiosity that isn't inherent because of who I am, but it's a curiosity because I want to perform. So I do think some things can be taught, but there are certain advantages in terms of really caring about people. Because when you really care about people, you actually naturally want to be empathetic. You want to be curious. You are looking for trends, spotting of solutions. So you're always creatively problem solving in the spaces that you operate in. And I think, Chaba, what I like, Khaya, is the responsibility of bringing those insights no longer only lie with one department. And depending on what business you are in, we either left it to a consumer market insight team, right? Or consumer market knowledge team, or the marketer was responsible for bringing this into the company. Right now, through the power of collaboration across functions, actually, and I think the WFA report talks about that, but also with our partners, whether that's my creative agency, whether that is actually people in sports, entertainment, and culture, the more you're able to rid yourself of the expectation of having to have all the answers, the quicker and faster you get, into the insightfulness, because you invite other partners into the problem and you invite them into the creation space, and they might have the insight that you're actually needing in order to solve for the problem. So it's not it's not as big a deal, if I can call it that, if you can counter for your lack of insightfulness with a power of collaboration.
Yeah.
Great. So I just have like another question here. There's an interesting study that I read a few years ago. The Harvard Business Review, and just kind of disturbing, as a marketer. So I'm reading this thing, and this particular stat said that this is in reference specifically to the US market. So I don't know how that kind of goes across the rest of the world, that 80% of CEOs were not entirely happy with their CMOs, okay, or their head of marketing. So I found it quite disturbing. So when the CMOs were asked why this was the case, and they basically said that, well, it's partly because there is a gap between what the CMO is expected to achieve on behalf of the business and the authority that they are given in order to make those changes. So the question that I have is, what can marketers do to ensure that they are more influential within the C-suite and are able to kind of have build this confidence that sometimes certain CEOs might not have. For example, like a new CEO might come in and they will elevate, the role of the CMO. And in other roles, another CMO comes into the same company, and then you have the CMO not reporting to the CEO. So what can we do to ensure that marketers have a permanent seat in the boardroom, in the C-suite?
Do they deserve a permanent seat? Let's not assume that they actually do, because the business has to be quite selfish around what it takes and what you need to dial up to be able to be successful at a point in time. We're not all gonna be strikers. Sometimes you have to go collect the ball and feed and assist the best person at a point in time to be the one that is successful. I think the disrespect that CMOs get might be a result of one, self-inflicted, and others, lack of knowledge from the rest of business as to what value are you actually creating and articulating it in the language that the business understands. Earlier, we spoke about when you have a title, please go and upskill yourself to be able to grow into that title and not just necessarily say, I have arrived, and then you stop there. That's why we're talking about continuous professional development, getting feedback that then allows you to also be able to have the confidence to articulate the value that you bring, not just in the C-suite, but in all the spaces that you occupy. When I was in the space that we used to sell, if you did not have a relationship with the trade guys, the guys that were taking your brand in the trade to sell, you're not going to have any shelf spacings. So you still also needed to make sure that you could influence those guys to drive your results and not just to the CEO. And also, lastly, for the CMOs that do eventually become CEOs, some of them are the culprits, where suddenly, because now they see the total business, forget that, what got them there, and they need to continue to respect.
So Chaba, can I just jump in on that point, because I've got a question from the chat, which I think is very relevant to the point you just raised. And it's from Mariska, and it says, isn't the issue that marketing teams often face roadblocks from finance, legal, and the C-suite, preventing them from carrying out their plans effectively? That's a different perspective on things. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll be quite brief. For anybody who has ever had to procure marketing services and go through the procurement, the pain. And there lies the answer, that a lot of the systems sometimes work against marketers, and that is the reality. And it's something that the business needs to recognize, that we are not necessarily having the best ideas flowing through marketing because our processes and system actually are putting the handbrakes.
Okay, great. Kai, do you have another question? Or
yeah? Actually, I do have another question. So, sometimes that it feels to me sometimes that people in marketing, right, may be rewarded for being safe. Yeah. So rather than being, like being bold. So what can be done to ensure that, marketers practice bold leadership, but bold and yet responsible leadership, and reward that rather than just a safe marketer?
I think the importance of creating value cannot be underestimated in this whole conversation, and the ability to articulate the value that you create, to all the players. You don't have to fight with finance a lot if finance knows that if I give Liz the money, the return on that money is much better than putting it anywhere else in the business. And that's where we do the disservice, is we don't measure enough what we do and the impact of what we do in order to then sell it. I think for me, a marketer is an influencer. If I simplify it, you either are influencing people to buy your stuff, or you're influencing somebody by selling that they should invest, in the profession of marketing and, in brand building. So your ability to tell stories that influence decisions is important, but those stories need to be backed by solid data and not vanity metrics. So that's the one part that I wanted to add to what Chaba had said. So Khaya, back to your question. I think there is a real need for marketers to, take the Lulu out the room, And what I love about some of the work that, eatbigfish has done is we have actually proven, through research, that a majority of the work that we do actually doesn't create value. If anything, it creates noise, right? So the cost of Dal white paper actually speaks to that. To say, on average, I think across the different countries, like 25% of the work actually stands out to consumers in terms of making them feel something. And we all know that marketing is very much linked up, to the emotional side of things and making irrational decisions more than it is rational. So our ability to measure the impact of the stuff that we put out there, and the ability for that to convert into a sale, convert into a more powerful brand, is where I think we are lacking in confidence. Because once you have that, you are able to then make the brave bet. And you know that the failure of this one campaign is not going to be the failure of the brand. So you have a little bit more propensity to fail reiteratively to eventually get to effective work. So I'll make the example of Kraft Heinz, right? Who I think was awarded the Grand Prix last year at Cannes for creative effectiveness. One, because they could show and demonstrate that they could build results over a long time. But the work from year one was not the same as the work that we're seeing that's coming out of Kraft Heinz right now, right? So the boldness came with understanding what works on your brand. Do you understand your brand voice? Do you understand your brand's distinctive assets? Do you understand the areas, that your brand can extend into in terms of fandoms, right? So maybe I'm selling tomato sauce, but sports and food and tomato sauce are linked, color and culture. Where is red trending? So being able to understand where your brand can naturally extend itself into is also a marketing skill. Otherwise, you're just buying popularity. I'm finding the what is called the most trending TikTok song, and my brand is right in there. And that's what frustrates, I think, the C-suite, to say, okay, you are not creating new value, you're not innovating. You're just copying what is out there. And what we need are marketers who are going to be able to create disproportionate incremental value.
Lovely. I'm going to go to some questions, if you don't mind, from the participants who have been posting on the chat. Got quite a few flowing through. I see Khaya's got some in front of him as well. But let me ask this one first and foremost. I think this is to whoever wants to answer an AI-related question. In an era when AI is growing so rapidly, is it worth doing a 3 or 4 year degree? Would a 1 year course be sufficient? That's from Mona Lisa.
I would say, Mona Lisa, the choice is yours. Really, I don't think there's one way of cutting this pie. The reality, and I think the biggest thing for me is understanding how AI in whatever the area that you want to go into is going to help you as a partner versus trying to get a firm understanding of all the different tools that are out there, how they operate. Now everybody thinks they can become a prompt engineer, you know? That's not where my core speciality as a marketer is. I should be able to leave that to the people who know how to do that. And largely, they're not sitting in my everyday working team. I need to partner with specialists, but mine is to understand my business problem, right? And solve it quicker through with my partnership with AI. Yeah? If you wanted to then become a specialist, either on AI design, maybe that's why you need a longer course. But if you just wanted to understand what AI is as a tool, what are the systems out there, and also what are the risks that come with AI in terms of ethics, in terms of copyright law, that's, I would say, is what I'd almost encourage every marketeer to understand is what is this thing? How do you use it to be more effective? And where are some of the risk areas that I'll have to navigate? Particularly on stuff like POPI and information in South Africa. What are the legal compliance that I need to be taking a hold of? So I don't think there's there's no right answer. It's where do you want to go in terms of your depth of understanding.
That's a very helpful answer. Thank you, Elizabeth. Khaya, you have another question from...
So this one is also related to AI. So this is from Nelis Slavati. How does the panel plan to use AI in their day-to-day work as marketers?
Oh, so that's a very easy one because the fundamentals are already in place. And that basically then means I'm able, at least at a skill and competency level, to have those in place. What AI does is to just help one to process data fast. It's a speed thing. Because if you really slow down, what happens? It's literally going to the library, checking the relevant text, interpreting it, comparing it to the other, and basically doing it faster to still give me the answer. So AI really in this one, it's a tool that allows me, based on what I'm asking, to give me an answer. Like I've always said, if you ask the wrong question, you will get an answer. You'll still be wrong. It's just being able then, as a marketer at a professional level, to know how to get to the right question, and then AI just assists you to get you the answer quicker. Then also, you can then compare multiple answers that you have, and then you choose the best one that will solve the business easier.
Okay, thank you, Sechaba. Question from CC. What's your opinion on business owners needing inherent skills or an understanding of marketing before appointing freelancers or building a team or appointing an agency? Do the business owners need to know what this marketing thing is about before they actually, start building our teams?
Yeah, I think as a business owner, one of the biggest challenges you have is cost, right? How to keep your costs lean, to make some kind of profit, or even just, break even without incurring too much cost. That would inhibit the growth of your business or even risk the existence of your business. So I definitely, absolutely think every business owner must know why they're in business. What are you selling? How does it help people? And what's different about it? Those are the three starting fundamentals of marketing. So I think having an appreciation of how to tell that story, at least at a basic level, is what a business owner should have. I don't think that you need to overinvest in the depth of marketing because there are different skills, like they call competencies of marketing. There's growth strategy, there's design, there's brand custodianship, there is, digital marketing. There's a whole host of things that can actually become a distraction, in the beginning, that takes away from the very fundamental of, can I prove that I can make a business that can run effectively and continuously? I'd say if you've got those top 3 questions that I talked about answered, and showcase what are the things that make the business continue to work, you're already doing enough of the marketing baseline. Then once
Yeah.
you've got a business running, you might want to start thinking about the other things on, how do I create demand using social? How do I really craft a standout brand even further? The brands that we're seeing today didn't start out looking this way. Some of them were very janky with very, $5 dollar store logos, but you don't start there. Yeah, you start in solving a problem in a way that people want the product that you're selling. And through MVPs, you grow into the scalable marketing machine.
It's a good question, and thank you for that answer, Elizabeth. But it's a great question because most entrepreneurs that do well naturally have this kind of real sense of the market and the consumer at the end of the day, and that's the real power, right? If they've got that implicitly in their minds all the time. How do you have a question?
Okay, this is a bit of strange, just passed off to me. It's from Dando Mbofana for Khaya. I'm sorry, Elizabeth and Sechaba.
It's all right.
So,
I'm dying to hear what this is.
Looking at some of your past campaigns, how have you honed your ability to understand consumer behavior? And I think for me, consumer behavior, like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, is really about curiosity and understanding human behavior and leveraging it. I'm not going to use the word taking advantage, it's leveraging it. And I remember when we launched, when I was at Coca-Cola, we repackaged PowerPlay, the energy drink that is now known as Play. And one of the insights that we realized was that when people wake up early in the morning, they take the taxi, they go to work and all of that. So they don't have the luxury of having go to some coffee stand, get a cup of coffee and walk on their way, like taxi drivers. So what we realized is that actually what we need to do is to make the product more accessible to those people who wake up early in the morning. And so PowerPlay was more, it was cheaper. We gave it to people who would be on their way to work or from work because they need the energy because they wake up pretty early, 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time you are walking at 8 to your office, you've been up for a long time. So you do need a level of energy, but you just don't have the time to be making coffee, to be buying coffee and walking, like someone who walks in New York, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you kind of, it's really got to do with human behavior. I have plenty of examples, but I just wanted to use that one specific one.
Nice answer.
Yeah.
I've got a very
David,
big
can
question.
I just say,
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry, Khaya, what I liked about what you just demonstrated is a simplicity with an insight that we can all resonate with, yeah? That's sometimes the power, is being able to get an insight that resonates not only locally, but I'm sure there are other markets all over the world where people don't have the ability, to walk to a coffee station and buy a coffee. So then that in itself means, how do I then get a power play to become a global brand? And David and I always have this conversation where I was saying, you absolutely need to be observant in the local context, but the insight can be so strong and so powerful that it can create a global scalable brand. And I think that for me is an example of that, where 7 out of 10 women after that research had said that they feel worse about their individual look, after having being exposed to beauty magazines, to all of these different things. And through a 20-year journey, you're creating an over 5 billion rand brand. One insight for 20 years evolved in terms of the trend and expression, but the power of insightfulness cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a wonderful build. While I have you, Elizabeth, and Chaba, you're welcome to answer this as well, but this is a really it's been specifically directed in the chat to Elizabeth from Shawneen, which is a question I think pretty relevant to Unilever actually. What socioeconomic problems is marketing currently solving for? And I think this goes back to an earlier point you made right at the beginning of the chat. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think Unilever as a company is known for being one that, believes fundamentally that brands that have a purpose grow, companies that have a purpose last, and people who have a purpose thrive, right? So we really advocate for individuals finding their individual purpose. Like, why am I here in this role in South Africa, in this company? What am I going to bring to that? Same thing as Unilever. How do we exist within South Africa to make an impact and brighten everyday lives for the people that use our businesses? So I can name a couple, but let me just run through some of them. Like I talked about, Dove is probably the biggest self-esteem project in the world. And I think in South Africa alone, we've touched over, I think it was 1.5 million young learners, girls, in terms of really helping them with the self-esteem project, rethink what real beauty and beauty looks like. We also advocate, for real representations of women in different spaces. So we do not Photoshop any of the models that are in our campaigns. We advocate for not having, even with AI, right? Feeding AI more realistic expressions of women, which is, I think, the most recent campaign that we've done. So that as a brand does that. We've got a lot of nutrition brands that sit on our portfolio that are actually making sure that we are fixing some of the iron and nutritional deficiencies that we have in the country. So making sure that the food that people are eating actually is nutritious. Norox is iron fortified. I think Knorr as well, locally sourced ingredients in some of our products and spices. So we create employment in that regard. We're also, in agriculture, trying to teach communities how to pair not only the soup, but put some vegetables to make a meal more nutritious. And there's all those campaigns. In my neck of the woods, which is home and hygiene, right? Sanitation is a big, big problem that we have in this country. And we've got a brand like Domestos that I think for the last over 15 years, has been involved with the Department of Basic Education in a sanitary dignity campaign. And there are a couple of pillars of that, to eradicating pit latrines, to making sure that we give them the right tools to clean toilets and sustain them, and also making sure that we're teaching kids. So there's lots in that space.
And almost a subject for a whole another webinar, actually. But it's thank you for answering that so clearly and with such specific examples, Elizabeth. I've got a question which maybe you can start with, Sechaba. We're in the final 8 minutes of our webinar, but just one from Michaela. I was going to ask this anyway, actually, so maybe both of you can answer, but let's start with Sechaba. If you were starting out your career again today, what would you focus on learning first? Great question.
Human behavior. Ultimately, for people, that will be the one. The other one will be reading more and hanging out more with people that are not in the marketing profession, engineers, accountants, lawyers, teachers, because the point that we've been making is around where do you get insights? It's on the human behavior. The more I expand the network that I have, I think I'll learn even more. And also, I would like to collaborate more. The one thing that I wouldn't change is my passion for brands, because ultimately, brands is a measure where we say, hold us accountable because I've put my logo and stamp to it. So if anything goes right, you know who to go to. If anything goes wrong, you know where to go to. And that is what we are adding to society by that level of transparency, accountability, by putting brands onto what we put out in the market.
Okay. Thank you, Sechaba. Elizabeth?
Yes, I think what I would do is very much like you'd said, is continue to be the advocate for the consumer in the room. And oftentimes, I think earlier in your career, you shy away from putting that truth into the room to say, no, people don't do that, oh no, people don't, do or act that way. No, that's not a need that people have. It's not resonating. And I think torture testing some of the truth that sit in the room is probably something we don't do enough of. And because those rooms were not representative. So as a young Black female who was entering marketing, in at that time, probably more predominantly white male rooms, I would have been more bold in sharing my experiences to help facilitate for better creation of mixes, creation of products. So don't be afraid to share a convergent view. Because your experiences are really probably what's shaping that, and put that in to the room. Learn how to
Lovely.
tell your story using data. I think the power of learning how to tell your story, to analyze how things are going, to understand things like economics and how those, socio-economic, geopolitical things are either threats or advantages in terms of the moment of what you're doing is an important part. But again, it comes back to this curiosity thing that we're talking about. Do you care what's happening in the world right now and what it would mean for what you're working on? So I think that's the second one. And then the last one is learning is a lifelong journey. So try and keep learning. The more you are aware of your ignorance, the more impactful you become. When you are honest to say, I don't know what I don't know, that is the start of curiosity. So don't stop learning.
Lovely. Those are beautiful answers. All right. In the interests of kind of wrapping up in the last few minutes, I'm gonna quickly ask each one of you to just drop one last kind of word of advice to people. If you had to kind of think about something you want to leave people with, I think you've just nailed quite a few there, Elizabeth. But if there's anything else that you kind of want to leave the audience with, what might that be in respect to the marketing profession and their pursuit of their journey in and around marketing?
I think from my side, you need to be a systems thinker. I think there are so many things that impact marketing, and having an appreciation of understanding the full ecosystem, whether it's geopolitical stuff, whether it's just really the living in culture of the consumers, language, and really having that broad lens through which you have an appreciation of your profession, but also really being loyal and dedicated to growing the profession. And you can only do that if you keep yourself up to speed with the latest and the greatest, and also growing people that are actually supporting you, either within the organization and outside. And lastly, please contribute to the whole of the marketing profession by being visible, like in MASA, for example, and add value there also.
Lovely. Show the love, Sechaba, as you said right at the beginning. Elizabeth.
I think, Chaba, I'll start where you ended, which is we all have a responsibility of service. Yeah. For all of us, there's great privilege, even when you don't feel like you are in a privileged situation. There's always someone out there that needs a mentor, a sponsor, a coach, feedback, somebody to bounce off ideas. So don't shy away from the honor of being able to serve society. And in that, MASA, the IAB, NGOs, there are so many opportunities for you to give of your skills that you're getting in the profession, right? So I think that would be the one part. And if I've talked of certain things like a mentor, a sponsor, and even a board of trustees that you don't have, invest in that, because the greatest skill and the greatest thing that we need in this profession is you. And if you're not investing in yourself, then we're not going to get the greatest outputs. So don't stop investing in making yourself the best entity for this institution.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much to you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Sechaba, for your time. Really, really appreciate your words of wisdom and advice and commentary. And thank you to Khaya for co-piloting this with me, and to the entire audience actually for your participation. The next webinar is on Thursday, the 17th of July, and it is about building a career in marketing. So we're going to have some real some marketing leaders there who've built their careers with some real stories about how they've built those careers, and would love you to participate in that conversation too. So please do make time for that at 12:30 on the Thursday, the 17th of July. Don't forget, if you're not a DM insider, please go to dailymaverick.co.za and sign up to become a DM insider. And thank you very, very much to all of you for all your participation. Have a wonderful, hopefully warmer Friday tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.